TS from Santo Tomas. Internment camp were getting worse. Food rations cut, medicine running out. Prisoners dying from malnutrition and disease. The Japanese camp commander had informed the Red Cross that all prisoners would be executed if Allied forces approached Manila. Gunn told Kenny he wanted to fly the first mission over Manila when the liberation came. Kenny promised he could. The strafers evolved. Through 1944, some carried 8.5 in high-velocity rockets under the wings. Some carried napalm tanks. Some carried parafrag bombs, small fragmentation bombs with parachutes that allowed the B-25 to drop them from minimum altitude without catching itself in the blast. The most effective tactic was the combined strike. Heil B-24 Liberators would bomb from 20,000 feet to force the defenders to look up. Then the strafers would come in low. By the time the gunners looked down, the B-25s were already on them. In the first 8 months of 1944, 5th Air Force strafers destroyed 947 Japanese aircraft on the ground. They sank 273 ships. They killed an estimated 38,000 Japanese soldiers. The modified B-25s had become the decisive weapon in the Southwest Pacific campaign. Gunn added his own modifications as the war progressed. He mounted additional fuel tanks to extend the range. He improved the gun cooling systems. He developed new ammunition loading techniques that increased the rate of fire. Some B-25s in the Pacific carried modifications that existed nowhere else because Gunn had invented them the night before a mission. Other theater commanders wanted strafers. Kenny sent them blueprints. The Mediterranean theater modified B-25s for anti-shipping missions against German convoys supplying North Africa. The China-Burma-India theater modified B-25s to attack Japanese supply lines along the Burma Road. The concept Gunn had proven in Brisbane spread across every combat zone. On October 20, 1944, American forces landed at Lee in the Philippines. The liberation of Manila was 3 months away. Gunn's family had been in captivity for nearly 3 years. He was flying multiple missions every day now. He told his crew chief he wouldn't stop until his family was free. Then the Japanese bombed Tacubin Airfield. The Japanese bombers hit Tacubin Airfield on November 27, 1944 at 0330 hours, 56 aircraft. Mitsubishi G-4M Betty bombers escorted by Zero fighters. They came in low from the north. The radar operators saw them too late. Gunn was in the operations tent reviewing mission plans for the morning strike when the first bombs hit. The tent was 200 yards from the main runway. Too close. The blast wave knocked him off his feet. Shrapnel tore through the canvas walls. A fragment hit Gunn in the left leg. Another hit his shoulder. The medical officer found him trying to stand. Blood soaking through his flight suit. Gunn said he needed to check on his aircraft. The doctor said he needed surgery. Gunn made it 30 feet before he collapsed. They evacuated him to the hospital at Lee. The leg wound was serious. The shrapnel had severed an artery. The surgeon said Gunn wouldn't fly again for 6 months minimum, probably longer. The injuries qualified him for medical retirement. 45 years old, 26 years of service between the Navy and Army. He'd earned the right to go home. Gunn told the surgeon he wasn't going anywhere until his family was free. The Battle of Manila started on February 3, 1945. American forces fought house to house through the city. The Japanese had declared Manila a fortress. They would defend every street. The fighting was brutal, building by building, block by block. Santo Tomas internment camp was liberated on February 3. 3,700 Allied prisoners freed. Gunn's wife Polly weighed 89 pounds. His daughter Julia weighed 63. They'd been eating rice and vegetable soup once a day for the past year. His son Nathaniel had malaria. His youngest daughter had dysentery, but they were alive. Gunn flew to Manila on February 4 against medical orders. His leg was still bandaged. He was using a cane. The doctor had cleared him for light duty only. No combat flying. Gunn went to Santo Tomas instead. He found his family in the makeshift hospital the Army had set up. Polly didn't recognize him at first. He'd lost 40 pounds since she'd last seen him in April 1942. 3 years. He was completely gray. She thought he was a doctor. Then he said her name and she knew. The official army report stated that Colonel Paul I. Gunn was reunited with his family on February 4, 1945 at Santo Toma's internment camp, Manila. The reunion lasted 4 hours. Then Gunn returned to Lee. His medical leave wasn't over, but the war wasn't either. The modified B-25s kept flying. Other pilots, other crews, but Gunn's modifications. By the end of the war, North American aviation had built 9,600 B-25 Mitchell bombers. Nearly 5,000 were Strafer variants with forward gun packages based on Gunn's original design. Those Strafers sank over 800 Japanese ships in the Pacific. They destroyed over 2,000 Japanese aircraft on the ground. They killed an estimated 85,000 Japanese soldiers. The commerce destroyer concept that engineers had called impossible had become the most effective anti-shipping weapon in the theater. Gunn never flew combat again. The leg wound ended his operational career. The Army retired him as a full colonel on June 30, 1948. Medical disability. He was 48 years old. He went back to the Philippines and rebuilt Philippine Airlines, the company he'd started before the war. Philippine Airlines resumed operations in 1946. Gunn started with 3 war-surplus C-47 transport aircraft. He flew routes between Manila, Cebu, Davao, and other Philippine cities. The airline he'd built with 5 Beechcraft planes before the war now operated across the entire archipelago. The Philippine government awarded him the Distinguished Service Star in 1947. President Manuel Rojas presented the medal personally. The citation read, "For extraordinary heroism and exceptional service to the Republic of the Philippines during the Liberation Campaign." Colonel Gunn's innovative modifications to Allied aircraft directly contributed to the defeat of Japanese forces and the freedom of the Filipino people. The United States military had already decorated him. Distinguished Flying Cross with Oak Leaf Cluster, Silver Star, Legion of Merit, Air Medal, 9 Purple Hearts. The Distinguished Service Cross was recommended but never approved. Some officers believed Gunn's contributions were technical rather than tactical. They were wrong. General Kenny wrote in his memoir, "Papy Gunn was the most valuable man in the 5th Air Force. His mechanical genius and combat innovations changed the course of the war in the Southwest Pacific. Without his Strafer modifications, the Battle of the Bismarck Sea would have been a Japanese victory. Without Bismarck Sea, we would have lost New Guinea. Without New Guinea, the road to the Philippines would have been impossible." MacArthur agreed. In a classified letter to the War Department dated July 1945, MacArthur recommended Gunn for promotion to Brigadier General. The recommendation was denied. The Army Air Force was reducing force structure. Promotions were frozen. Gunn remained a colonel. He never complained. He'd gotten what he fought for. His family was free. The Philippines were liberated. The Japanese were defeated. That was enough. Philippine Airlines expanded through the late 1940s and early 1950s. Gunn acquired DC-3 aircraft, then DC-4s, then Convair 340s. The airline established routes to Hong Kong, Bangkok, Singapore. By 1956, PAL was flying to San Francisco. Gunn's small inter-island airline had become an international carrier. He flew constantly, Manila to Cebu, Cebu to Davao, Davao to Hong Kong. He couldn't stop. The war had taught him that movement meant survival. Standing still meant death. Some of his pilots said Gunn was still fighting, still outrunning something. Maybe the memory of Santo Tomas. Maybe the faces of the men who'd flown his modified aircraft and never came back. On October 10, 1957, Gunn chartered a Beechcraft Model 18 twin-engine plane. He was flying from Manila to Baguio. Routine trip 140 miles north. Weather forecast showed scattered thunderstorms over the Cordillera Mountains, but nothing severe. He filed his flight plan at 0800 hours, departure time 0930, expected arrival, 1100 hours. The tower cleared him for takeoff at 0928. The weather deteriorated faster than forecast. By 10:30, the Cordillera Mountains were socked in. Heavy rain, low visibility, turbulence. The Beechcraft's radio went silent at 10:47. Search and rescue teams found the wreckage 3 days later on a mountainside near Baguio. The aircraft had flown into a storm cell. The pilots had tried to climb above it. The winds drove them into the ridge. Impact killed everyone, instantly. Paul Irvin Gunn died on October 11, 1957. He was 57 years old. 58 in 1 week. The Philippine government gave him a state funeral. 6,000 people attended. American veterans, Philippine Airlines employees, former prisoners from Santo Tomas. General Kenny sent a wreath from the United States. The Manila Times published Gunn's obituary on October 12. The headline read, "War Hero Dies in Plane Crash." The article mentioned his Distinguished Flying Cross, his role in the Battle of the Bismarck Sea, his liberation missions over the Philippines, but it couldn't capture what he'd actually done. The numbers told part of the story. 5,000 B-25 strafers built. With his modifications, 800 Japanese ships sunk, 2,000 aircraft destroyed on the ground, 85,000 enemy soldiers killed. Those were the official statistics, but the real impact was different. The strafer concept changed how air forces thought about bombers. Before Gunn, bombers dropped ordnance from altitude. After Gunn, bombers became multi-role weapons. Strafing, skip bombing, close air support. The AC-130 gunship used in Vietnam was a direct descendant of Gunn's B-25 modifications. So was the A-10 Warthog. So was every modern attack aircraft with forward-firing guns. North American Aviation hired Gunn as a consulting engineer in 1948. He worked on the B-45 Tornado jet bomber. He advised on gun mounting systems. He designed forward-firing armament packages. The company paid him well. He gave most of the money to veteran organizations. His son Nathaniel joined the Air Force, flew B-52s in Vietnam, retired as a colonel, wrote a book about his father titled Papy Gunn. The book was published in 1994. It sold 12,000 copies. Most people had never heard of Paul Gunn. The National Museum of the Pacific War in Fredericksburg, Texas displays one of Gunn's original gun mounting drawings. The paper is yellowed. The measurements are handwritten in pencil. The sketch shows 450 caliber guns mounted inside an A-20 nose compartment. No stress calculations, no computer modeling, just the drawing that killed 8,000 Japanese soldiers in the Bismarck Sea. The Air Force Association inducted Gunn into the Air Force Enlisted Heritage Hall in 2008. The citation mentioned his innovations, his combat record, his influence on modern attack aviation. The ceremony was held in Washington. 3 of his grandchildren attended. Philippine Airlines still operates today. The airline flies to 42 destinations across Asia, Australia, and North America. The company headquarters in Manila has a portrait of Gunn in the main lobby. Most employees don't know who he is. If this story moved you the evening of March 3, the entire Japanese convoy was destroyed. 8 transports sunk. 4 destroyers sunk. Of the nearly 7,000 Japanese troops that left Rabaul, fewer than 1,200 reached Leh, 2,700 were rescued and returned to Rabaul. The rest died in the Bismarck Sea. Allied losses: 4 aircraft, 1 B-7, 3 P-38s, 13 air crew killed. General MacArthur called it one of the most complete and annihilating combats of all time. The Japanese never again attempted to reinforce New Guinea by convoy. The war in the Southwest Pacific had turned, and it turned because of Paul Gunn's impossible gunship. Back in Australia, the Wright Field engineers were drafting their formal report explaining why the B-25 modifications couldn't possibly work. Kenny sent a message to General Hap Arnold in Washington on March 5. The subject line read, "Commerce Destroyer Modifications Approved for Production." The body of the message contained 1 paragraph. 12 B-25 strafers had just destroyed an entire Japanese convoy. Request immediate factory integration of forward gun package into all B-25 production aircraft. Arnold called North American Aviation's President J. H. Dutch Kindleberger that afternoon. Kindleberger said his engineers needed to see the modifications. Arnold said he was sending the man who designed them. Paul Gunn was going to California. Gunn didn't want to leave Australia. His wife Polly and their 4 children were still in the Santo Tomas internment camp. In Manila, the Japanese had held them since January 1942, 14 months. Gunn flew every mission hoping he'd get closer to liberating the Philippines. Going to California meant going in the wrong direction. Kenny made it an order. The 5th Air Force needed factory-built strafers, hundreds of them. Gunn was the only man who could show North American aviation how to do it right. The general promised Gunn would be back in the Pacific within 6 weeks. Gunn landed in Long Beach, California on March 27, 1943. The North American aviation plant covered 140 acres, 20,000 workers on 3 shifts. The assembly line produced 1 B-25 every 4 hours. The factory engineers studied Gunn's hand-drawn blueprints. They asked about stress calculations. Gunn said he didn't have any. They asked about wind tunnel testing. Gunn said he'd tested it by flying. They asked about the center of gravity problem. Gunn showed them where he'd moved the radio equipment aft to compensate. One engineer said the modifications would buckle the fuselage skin around the cheek gun mounts. The muzzle blast from the 50 caliber guns would peel the aluminum. Gunn said it did. Then he showed them the blast tubes he'd welded to extend beyond the propeller arc. Problem solved. The factory engineers spent 2 weeks reverse engineering Gunn's field modifications into production drawings. They strengthened the nose structure. They redesigned the gun mounts. They added heavier gauge aluminum patches to reinforce the fuselage skin. They calculated the exact center of gravity shift and adjusted the tail trim accordingly. The first factory-built B-25G Strafer rolled off the assembly line on May 10, 1943, 450 caliber guns. In the solid nose, a 75mm M4 cannon in the forward fuselage. The cannon used the same ammunition as the M3 Lee tank. 1 shell could hold a destroyer below the waterline. Gunn test flew the prototype. The 75mm cannon recoiled 4 feet when fired. The entire aircraft shuddered. The navigator had to manually reload the cannon between shots. Rate of fire, 1 round every 30 seconds. Gunn told the engineers it would work for ships. Maybe not for anything faster. North American Aviation built 400 B-25G Strafers. Then they improved the design. The B-25H added 4 more 50 caliber guns in the cheek packs. 8 guns in the nose, 4 in the cheeks. 2 in the top turret rotated forward. 14 forward firing guns total. The H model kept the 75mm cannon but added a better recoil system. The navigator could reload faster. Rate of fire increased to 1 round every 20 seconds. The B-25J removed the 75mm cannon and added 4 more 50 caliber guns, 18 forward firing guns, the most heavily armed production bomber in history. North American Aviation built 4,900 B-25JS. They delivered the first ones to the Pacific in October 1943. Gunn returned to Australia in May. He'd been gone 6 weeks. Exactly. His family was still in Manila. The strafers kept hunting. In April 1943, B-25s destroyed 16 Japanese barges carrying troops and supplies near Finch Hafen. In May, they sank 12 cargo ships at Wewak Harbor. In June, they hit the oil facilities at Balik Papan on Borneo. The Japanese stopped moving supplies by ship in daylight. It didn't help. The strafers learned to attack at night using radar. They learned to skip bomb from 50 feet in complete darkness. They learned to coordinate with PT boats that illuminated targets with searchlights. At the last second, the Japanese called the modified B-25s the Black Death. They weren't wrong. On November 2, 1943, Major Ben Fridge led 4 squadrons of strafers into Rabaul Harbor. 137 Allied aircraft total, 59 B-25s. The harbor held 38 Japanese vessels, cruisers, destroyers, tankers, cargo ships, minesweepers. The strafers came in at masthead height through phosphorus smoke that blinded the anti-aircraft gunners. They attacked from multiple directions simultaneously. The Japanese couldn't track them all. In 15 minutes, 30 ships were hit. 5 sunk. outright. 12 damaged beyond repair. The rest limping. Rabble Harbor was finished. As a forward supply base, Gunn flew that mission. He was 44 years old. He didn't have to fly combat. He was a Special Projects Officer Headquarters staff. But his family was still in Manila and every mission took him closer. The intelligence reports from Santo Tomas. At 7:42 a.m. on August 17, 1942, Captain Paul Gunn crouched under the wing of a Douglas A-20 Havoc at Eagle Farm Airfield near Brisbane, watching mechanics weld 50 caliber machine guns into the bomber's nose where the bombardier used to sit. 43 years old, 21 years in the Navy, his wife and 4 children trapped in a Japanese prison camp in Manila. The 5th Air Force was losing bombers faster than replacements arrived. In July alone, the 3rd Attack Group had lost 11 A-20s trying to hit Japanese convoys from high altitude. The bombardiers couldn't hit moving ships. When they dropped lower, the deck gunners shredded them. Captain Ed Laner had watched 3 of his crews burn in the Coral Sea the previous week. The Japanese were reinforcing New Guinea at will. Gunn had a different idea. If bombers flew low enough to skip bombs across the water like stones, they could hit ships at point-blank range. But first, they had to survive the approach. That meant overwhelming the deck guns with forward firepower. That meant turning bombers into strafers. The problem was simple. The A-20 Havoc had 4 30 caliber machine guns in the nose. 30 caliber rounds bounced off ship armor like hail. Gunn needed 50 caliber guns. 4 of them mounted where the bombardier sat, firing straight ahead. 1,700 rounds per minute combined. General George Kenney, the new 5th Air Force commander, had given Gunn 1 week to prove the concept worked. Gunn was using 50 caliber guns stripped from wrecked P-39 and P-40 fighters that wouldn't fly again. The pilots were dead. The guns weren't. He mounted the guns on a steel frame inside the nose compartment. Each gun weighed 64 lb. 4 guns, 200 pounds of ammunition. The weight shifted the center of gravity forward. The test flight almost killed the pilot. The A-20 barely climbed. It wanted to nose over. Gunn spent 2 days rebalancing the aircraft. He moved equipment aft. He adjusted the tail trim. The second test pilot reported the plane flew like it was angry, but it flew. On September 12, 16 modified A-20s hit the Japanese airfield at Buna. The strafers came in at treetop level. Guns hammering. They destroyed 14 Japanese aircraft on the ground and suppressed every anti-aircraft position. 0 A-20s lost. Kenney wanted more, but the A-20 had problems. Its range was too short to reach Japanese bases across the Owen Stanley Mountains. Its bomb load was too light. Gunn needed a bigger platform, the B-25 Mitchell. Longer range, heavier payload, more space for guns. In December, Gunn pulled the bombardier and nose guns from a B-25C and installed 4 50 caliber guns in the nose, 4 more in external cheek packs on the fuselage, and rotated the top turret forward, 10 forward firing guns. Then he added 2 more on each side, 14 guns total, 215 pounds of lead per second. The ground crew called it Papy's folly. If you want to see how Papy's impossible gunship turned out, please hit that like button. It helps us share more forgotten stories like this one, and please subscribe if you haven't already. Back to Papy. Gunn flew the prototype to Charter Towers to demonstrate it to the 3rd Attack Group. The plane was nose-heavy. It wanted to drop out of the sky on takeoff. He had to use full back pressure on the stick just to keep it level, but once airborne, the B-25 was a flying destroyer. Kenney ordered 12 more conversions immediately. The 81st Air Depot Group in Townsville worked 18-hour days to modify every available B-25. By February 1943, they had 30 strafers ready for combat. Then Kenney sent the blueprints to Wright Field in Ohio. The Army Air Force engineers studied the modifications for 3 days. Then they sent a message back to Australia. The modifications were impractical. The balance would be wrong. The airplane would be too heavy. It wouldn't fly properly. They recommended grounding every modified B-25 immediately. Kenney was in Washington when the message arrived. He walked into General Arnold's office where the right field engineers were waiting to explain why Papy Gunn's gunship was impossible. Kenny told them, 12 of the impossible airplanes had just played the key role in destroying a Japanese convoy in the Bismarck Sea. Every transport sunk. 60 more strafers were already being modified in Australia. Arnold practically ran the engineers out of his office. The Battle of the Bismarck Sea started with intelligence intercepts. On February 28, 1943, Allied couriers in Melbourne had decrypted Japanese naval messages. A convoy was leaving Rabat. 8 transport ships, 8 destroyer escorts, nearly 7,000 Japanese troops bound for Lae on New Guinea's north coast. General Kenny had 72 hours to stop them. The convoy route crossed the Bismarck Sea between New Britain and New Guinea, 400 meters of open water. Japanese commanders believed bad weather would shield them. March was monsoon season. Low clouds, heavy rain, poor visibility. Allied bombers couldn't hit what they couldn't see. They were right about the weather. They were wrong about the bombers. On March 2, reconnaissance aircraft spotted the convoy steaming south through the Vitas Strait. B-7 flying fortresses attacked from 15,000 feet through cloud breaks. They dropped 137 bombs. They claimed multiple hits. Post-battle analysis showed they sank nothing. High-altitude bombing against moving ships didn't work. The Japanese convoy kept coming. That night, the ships scattered. The transports hugged the New Guinea coast. The destroyers formed the screen. Japanese commanders thought they'd reach Lele by dawn on March 4. They'd unload the troops under fighter cover. The war in New Guinea would turn in Japan's favor. They had no idea what was coming at first light. Captain Ed Lehner briefed the 92nd Bomb Squadron at Port Moresby on the evening of March 2. 12 B-25 strafers, 30 modified A-20 Havocs, Royal Australian Air Force Bow fighters. For top cover, P-38 Lightnings to handle Japanese Zeros. The strafers would attack at masthead height 50 feet above the water. Gun range point blank. The plan was simple. Overwhelm the deck guns with concentrated firepower. Skip bomb the ships while they were stunned. Get out before the Zeros arrived. Lehner had flown one practice mission using this tactic. 1. His navigator asked what happened if the strafer took fire in the approach. Lehner said they'd find out tomorrow. The briefing ended at 2200 hours. Nobody slept. At 6:30 on March 3, the strike force assembled over Cape Ward Hunt. 137 aircraft. B-7s would attack first from altitude to draw the defensive fire high. Then the strafers would come in low. The Japanese convoy was 70 miles northwest of Lae when the B-7s arrived. The heavy bombers attacked through scattered clouds. The transports opened fire with every gun. The sky filled with black puffs. One B-7 took flak damage and turned back. The rest pressed the attack. Then the strafers arrived. Lehner led the B-25s in from the southeast at wave-top height. 14. Forward firing guns per aircraft, 168 guns total across 12 strafers. They came in line of breast, a wall of firepower 300 yards wide. The Japanese crews on the transport Kyoku Simaru saw them at 2 miles. The ship's captain ordered, hard to starboard. Too late. The B-25s opened fire at 800 yards. The 50 caliber rounds walked across the water like a chainsaw. They hit the ship's superstructure, shredded the bridge, killed the anti-aircraft crews before they could traverse their guns. 3 B-25s dropped bombs at 100 yards. The first bomb skipped off the water, hit the hull below the water line, detonated inside the engine room. The second bomb hit amidship. The third bomb missed. Kyuk Maru was dead in the water 30 seconds after the strafers arrived. Burning, listing to port. The ship would sink in 40 minutes. And that was just the first transport. The transport Tiao Maru tried to run. The captain pushed the engines to full speed, 15 knots maximum. The B-25 strafers were doing 240 knots. The math was simple. 4 strafers bracketed Tiao Maru from both sides. The 50 caliber streams converged on the deck. The anti-aircraft crews died at their guns. The bridge windows shattered. The ship's executive officer took 3 rounds through the chest. The captain lasted another 10 seconds before a burst cut him down. The strafers dropped 8 bombs total. 5 hit. The ship broke in half. Japanese soldiers were below decks when the hull split. Most never made it topside. The transport sank in 6 minutes. Survivors jumped into the Bismarck Sea wearing full combat gear. The packs dragged them under. Australian bow fighters strafed the decks of the destroyer Shikami as it tried to screen the transports. The destroyer's anti-aircraft fire hit one bow fighter. The Australian pilot kept coming. His forward guns rad the destroyer's deck from bow to stern. The Japanese gun crews went down. When the B-25 strafers arrived, Shikami had no defense. 3 strafers attacked from different angles. The destroyer tried to turn into the attack. Too slow. Bombs hit port side, starboard side, and amidships. The destroyer didn't sink immediately, but it was finished. Dead in the water. Fires spreading. The crew abandoned ship. 2 hours later, by 0900 hours on March 3, the Japanese convoy was scattered across 40 square miles of ocean. 5 transports sinking or burning. 2 destroyers crippled. The remaining ships tried to make flay. They didn't make it. The strafers returned at 1400 hours. Fresh bombs, full ammunition loads. The Japanese had no fighter cover. The Zeros had landed at Lele to refuel. They were on the ground when the second wave arrived. The transport Io Maru took 12 bomb hits in the second attack. The ship's magazine detonated. The explosion was visible from Port Moresby, 130 meters away. When the smoke cleared, there was nothing left. No wreckage, no survivors. 1,800 Japanese soldiers gone in 3 seconds. Captain Ed Laner Strafer came in low over the transport Oawa Maru. His co-pilot counted 14 separate fires on the deck. Japanese soldiers were jumping overboard. The anti-aircraft guns were silent. Elner's bombardier released at point-blank range. 2 bombs, both hit. The transport settled by the stern and capsized. The modified A-20 Havocs hunted the crippled destroyers. The destroyer Asashio tried to rescue survivors from the water. 3 A-20s attacked from different directions. The destroyer's crew was focused on rescue operations. They never saw the strafers until the guns opened fire. Asio took bomb hits on the forward deck and bridge. The destroyer burned through the night and sank at dawn on March 4. By the way it moved us, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Every single like tells YouTube to show this story to more people. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We're rescuing forgotten stories from dusty archives every single day. Stories about mechanics who saved thousands of lives with gun packages and field modifications. Real people, real heroism. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you're watching from. You're not just a viewer. You're part of keeping these memories alive. Tell us your location. Tell us if someone in your family served. Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching and thank you for making sure Papy Gunn doesn't disappear into silence. These men deserve to be remembered, and you're helping make that